first we're going to try to solve y equals x squared plus 2x minus 3 by graphing. Okay, so to graph, the first step is to find the axis of symmetry. And to do that, it's negative b over 2a. Some of you guys are wanting to square this because you're getting it confused with the b over 2 squared for completing the square. You only square when you complete the square. So this one is just negative b over 2a. So that's going to be negative 2 over 2 times 1. So negative 2 over 2 is negative 1. So that means that the axis of symmetry, actually I might even highlight it, for this one is going to be on negative 1. Okay, so this is where the center of the parabola will be, okay, on negative 1. So now that I know that that's where the center of it, sorry, now that I know that that's where the center of it's going to be, I need to figure out where is the bottom or the top going to be. So, and actually because this is positive, I know it's going to be opening up. So it's going to have a vertex somewhere below. Okay, so I take negative 1 and I plug it in. So y equals negative 1 squared plus 2 times negative 1 minus 3. So that's 1 minus 2 minus 3. So 1 take away 2 is negative 1 minus 3 is negative 4. So now I know the vertex is at negative 1, negative 4. So I can come over here to negative 1, negative 1, 2, 3, 4, and put a dot. So that's my vertex, negative 1, negative 4. So now I need to pick x values to the right and to the left and plug those in. So if I plug in, I'm going to go to 0 because that's an easy one. So 0 squared plus 2 times 0 minus 3 is negative 3. So that gives me 0, negative 3. So 0, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. That's 1 away to the right, so 1 to the left is also negative 3. Okay, and that starts my parabola. So now I'm going to pick positive 1 because I'm still not up to crossing the x-axis. So if I plug in positive 1, that's 1 squared plus 2 times 1 minus 3. So 1 squared, is 1, plus 2 is 3, minus 3 is 0. So that's the point 1, 0. So that's one of the points I've been looking for, okay, because the 0 is where it crosses the x-axis. So that's 2 to the right of my axis of symmetry. So 2 to the left would be right here. So this and this are the solutions. So from the x-axis, I have it balancing on paper towels. Okay, so from the x-axis, that's 1, 2, 3. So that's negative 3. And here, that's x equals positive 1. So we solved it by graphing. We found the axis of symmetry by doing negative b over 2a, not square, because you only square when you complete the square. And then I took that x value and I plugged it in to my original equation to get y, which gave me the vertex. Once you have the vertex, I'm start picking to the right and to the left until I get points that cross 0. Okay, next up we're going to go ahead and we're going to solve these using square roots. When there's no b term, like there's no just plain x, there's x squared and then there's numbers, all we have to do is get the x squared to equal a number and then we take the square root. So for example, subtract 14, subtract 14. 5x squared equals 92 minus 14 would be, let's see, 82, 78. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 5. Okay, I could do that as a decimal, but I'm just going to leave it as x squared equals 78 over 5. And then my next step is going to be to take the square root of both sides. So all I have to do is type into my calculator, can you guys see that? The square root of 78 over 5. Close my parentheses, that's 3.9. So 3.9 or negative 3.9. And that's my answer. Okay, the next one, subtract 8, x squared equals negative 6. Okay, what you should notice right here before I even take the square root, okay, is that there is no number that multiplied by itself is going to give you a negative 6. So this one would be no solution. And that would be my answer. Okay, and then the very last one, I am going to divide both sides by 15. So I have x squared equals 60 divided by 15 is 4. Then I do the positive and the negative square root of 4. So that's just 2 and negative 2. And that's my answer. Okay, next up we are solving 3x squared minus 10x plus 5 using the quadratic equation. So it's already set equal to 0. The quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so sing the song, it'll help you tomorrow. When I plug in my numbers, okay, that's going to give me x equals negative 10 is 10 plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a, which is 3. Okay, and I'm going to bring it back down over here. So x equals 10 plus or minus the square root. 10 squared is 100. 4 times 3 is 12 times 5 is 60 all over 6. So x equals 10 plus or minus the square root. 100 minus 60 is 40 all over 6. So this is where I can go ahead and just use my calculator. Okay, 10 plus the square root of 40. Hit enter, divide by 6, 2.7. Okay, or 10 minus the square root of 40. Hit enter and divide it by 6, and I get 0.6. And those are my two answers. Okay, next up is completing the square. This might trick you a little bit because this is a square root or a perfect square, but because it's a negative, right, this would be like plus negative 36. It's not perfect because there's nothing that we can multiply together times itself that's going to give us negative 36. So the first step is to add 36 to both sides. So now I have x squared plus 16x equals 36. Okay, the point in doing this was to create the little blank for our own c. Okay, what we're going to figure out c is. This is where you do b over 2 squared. Okay, b over 2 squared. Not negative b over 2a, but b divided by 2, this middle term divided by 2 squared. So 16 divided by 2 is 8. 8 squared is 64. So that is what goes in there and over here. Okay, so I completed the square by taking the middle term, cutting it in half, and then squaring it. So the whole reason I did that was so I could rewrite this part, okay, as the square of a binomial, where the square root of 64 is 8. So I know 8 times 8 is 64, and 8 plus 8 is 16. And that now equals 36 plus 64 is 100. So now I take the square root of both sides. So the square root of x plus 8 squared is just x plus 8. Then I have plus or minus the square root of 100. So that's plus or minus 10. So I'm really close, but I want x by itself. So I have to subtract 8 from both sides. So now I have x equals negative 8 plus or minus 10. So negative 8 plus 10 is going to be 2, or negative 8 minus 10 is going to be negative 18. And if you really wanted to, if you had extra time on your test or something, go ahead and plug them in and check it. Okay, so 2 squared plus 16 times 2 minus 36, and I'm hoping that I get, I plug that into this for top one, that I get 0. Perfect, equals 0. And then negative 18 I can type in negative 18 squared plus 16 times negative 18 minus 36, and I got 0. So I know that these two are the correct solutions. Okay, for the very last part, we're going to solve a system. And so what you want is you want one of your equations to be solved for y, and then you're going to substitute that in for y in the other equation. So right here you can see that y equals negative 2x squared plus 8x minus 5. So I can take this and put it down here in place of this y. So what that's going to give me is negative 2x squared plus 8x minus 5, and then minus 15x equals negative 2. Okay, so hopefully you can kind of see I took this value of y, this whole thing equaled y, so I was able to put it in here instead of y. So now, in this big long equation, I only have x's. So what I want to do is see if there's any like terms I can combine. And I can combine 8x minus 15x. So for my new equation, I'm going to have negative 2x squared minus 7x, and then I'm going to go ahead and add 2. So minus 3 equals 0. So it's set equal to 0. I don't want to do complete the square because this is a whole number. It doesn't look like it can factor. Maybe it could, but I'm not going to try it. I'm just going to go ahead and go straight into quadratic. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root, b squared minus 4 times a times c, and that whole thing is over 2 times negative 2. So x equals 7 plus or minus the square root of 49 minus, and then we get 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times negative 3 is 24, but because there's two negatives, that's a positive. All over 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. Okay, so x equals 7 plus or minus the square root. 49 minus 24 is 25. All over negative 4. So I don't even, or I shouldn't, I could, but I shouldn't even need my calculator at this point because it's going to be 7 plus or minus 5 over negative 4. So if I do 7 plus 5 over negative 4, that's 12 over negative 4, which is negative 3. Or I could do 7 minus 5 over negative 4. So 7 minus 5 is 2 over negative 4, which just simplifies to negative 1/2. So I ended up with negative 3 or negative 1/2 as my possible x values. Okay, and I should be able to, come back up here into this one where I wrote it out set equal to 0. And if I try like negative 3, I would have negative 2 times negative 3 squared, then minus 7, oops, that's a 4, times negative 3, minus 3, and I'm really hoping that when I hit enter, it's going to give me 0. And it did, so that's right. And if I could even go in and check the negative 1/2 by doing negative 2 times negative 0.5 squared minus 7 times negative 0.5, and then minus 3. And I got 0 again. So I know that both of those are the correct zeros.